Ecuadorian judiciary has ruled that the 16 soldiers being investigated for the enforced disappearance and subsequent murder of 4 children in Guayaquil will remain in jail while the investigation continues. The Netanyahu government initiated 6 colonial projects in occupied Jerusalem with the alleged approval of the Trump administration. And the summit of Arab countries to work out a coordinated response to the White House's plan for Gaza has begun in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. Hello and welcome to From the South. I'm Alejandra Garcia from teleSUR Studios in Caracas, Venezuela. We begin with the news. Stay with us. The Ecuadorian judiciary has ruled that the 16 soldiers being investigated for the enforced disappearance and subsequent murder of 4 children in Guayaquil will remain in jail while the investigation continues. The Provincial Court of Guayaquil argued that the preventive detention was necessary to guarantee the impartial development of the investigation. In this sense, the decision was made after a 2-day appeal hearing in which the uniformed officers claimed that the minors had been left alive. It should be remembered that on the night of December 8, 2024, 4 young people were abducted during a police operation, and on the 24th of the same month, their bodies were found burned near the airbase to which the soldiers involved in the case belonged. All this in the midst of the state of emergency declared by the government of Daniel Noboa under the pretext of tackling the security crisis in the country. Mass deportations from the United States are a reality in El Salvador. However, the government has not revealed any plan to deal with an eventual mass return of migrants. From San Salvador, correspondent Roberto Hugo Presa gives us the details.
As every week, planes from the United States arrive at Monsignor Romero Airport full of deportees. There are officially no figures, but it is certain that deportations will increase in the coming weeks without any state plan for returnees being known.
El Salvador has 210,000 deportation orders for Salvadoran citizens who are living in the United States with or without residency. We also have a considerable number of Salvadorans who are requesting asylum and have an appointment in court, and when they get to court they are going to be told no.
This implies that the profile of deportees coming in the coming weeks is different from the traditional ones, warn migration experts.
They may be older people with chronic illnesses, people who have lived 30, 40 years in the United States, who have never settled their situation and who are already accustomed to a reality different from that of El Salvador. Therefore, the impact which they are going to have on this reintegration process is extremely complicated.
In the face of this bleak outlook, organizations working on behalf of returnees are doing their part. The Integration Center for Migrant Workers, for example, runs support programs that include psychological help, training, community organization, and seed capital for entrepreneurship.
And many families that we have supported have improved their basic basket of goods, their access to basic services. So, we see that they even have the possibility of some, so to speak, some leisure activities. So, this has improved at different levels, not only at an economic level, but also at a psychosocial level for families and communities.
Iris is one of the beneficiaries and says she would not attempt to risk her life and the lives of her children once again on the so-called death route.
Because what we went through was not easy and, as I said, I almost lost my son's life, and if we had a second chance, I don't think I would waste it like that, with ups and downs. But as I said, I have my business. I am with my children, and I know we can get ahead here.
y yo sé que podemos salir adelante aquí.
Although no mass deportations have been officially registered so far, U.S. immigration authorities have reported dozens of arrests of Salvadorans, who will sooner or later be repatriated.
Roberto Hugo Presa, teleSUR, El Salvador.
On Thursday, Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro addressed the media and political campaign regarding the Aragua-trained criminal organization. He highlighted that Venezuela had defeated the organization and suggested President Trump investigate where its funding really came from.
They've wanted to use the Biden's administration campaign on the topic of the Aragua train. On this I have a very clear position. I tell President Donald Trump, with respect, to request the FBI and DEA reports for the last 4 years from their offices in Colombia, so you can see, President Trump, who funded, who mobilized, who led the famous Aragua train, who brought it to Colombia, who brought it to the United States. And ask for the truthful reports, so you know that here in Venezuela we defeated, dismembered, and put an end to that violent criminal group.
In Argentina, on Thursday, the Senate approved the bill promoted by President Javier Milei that suspends the primary, open, simultaneous and compulsory election PASO in the run-up to the legislative elections next October. The project to eliminate the PASO election was presented by Javier Milei with the argument that these primary elections in which the vote of the citizens is obligatory and are costly and allegedly useless. The initiative was endorsed with 43 votes in favor, 20 against and 6 abstentions, becoming law. It only needs the promulgation of President Milei to enter into force. For their part, the opposition denounces this is yet another attack to democratic institutions. In Argentina, members of the National Civil Aviation Workers Association continue to meet in the face of possible layoffs in the sector. The union condemned the authorities' intention to transfer functions to other agencies, including the expulsion of several workers. It also pointed out that the redundancies in the state agency posed a significant risk. It warned that the loss of qualified workers could have consequences for the sector. And now we have a short break coming up, but first remember you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates and more. We'll be right back, stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. The Netanyahu government initiated 6 colonial projects in occupied Jerusalem with the alleged approval of the Trump administration. A spokesperson for the Israeli Amin non-governmental organization announced activating the construction of new settlements in Palestinian lands as U.S. President Trump backs up the expansion of Israeli settlers in occupied territories. The non-governmental organization further confirmed Israel demolished around 255 Palestinian buildings in East Jerusalem in 2024, in addition to 27 others torn down in 2025. These clear violations of international law and regulations forced the displacement of thousands of Palestinian civilians. Palestinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs also issued a communique to denounce Israeli bill as the latter condemns entities and organizations defending human rights. The ministry ensured that Israel was trying to hide out the constant violations of its military forces. The entity further described them as war crimes against humanity. Likewise, the statement expressed Palestinians' rejection of genocide, forced displacements, and annexations of Palestinian lands by the Tel Aviv regime. Moreover, they urged the international community to take action against such legislative initiatives by the Israeli government. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered a massive raid against the West Bank, justifying his genocidal offensive by the earlier blast of 3 empty buses in Batman city near Tel Aviv, capital of Israel. Israel decided to tighten up the military Iron Wall operation, which occupation forces had launched since January against the West Bank. The Prime Minister made such a decision following a meeting he held with both the police and the Shin Bet intelligence agency. Likewise, human rights organizations recalled that since January, Israel has expelled over 45,000 Palestinians from the West Bank. So they fear the Israeli government used that explosion, which there is no conclusive evidence yet, to keep up its military intervention. Israeli authorities claim that one of the 4 bodies returned from Gaza was not one of the captives to be handed over by Hamas. The Israeli army said early Friday morning that it has completed the process of identifying 3 of the bodies of the hostages handed over earlier in the day by the Islamic resistance movement Hamas, and they say one of them does not match. The announcement comes at a fragile time for the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, which began on January 19th and which has been marked by a series of Israeli violations, and now on the Palestinian movement and closures in parts of the West Bank as part of its security operations in the area. The summit of Arab countries to work out a coordinated response to the White House's plan for Gaza has begun in Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. The member countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council plus Egypt and Jordan agreed to reject the U.S. president's plan. With this agenda, the representatives of the United Arab and Bahrain, the host country Saudi Arabia, and the 2 countries that are not part of the coalition are holding this meeting, which they have defined as a fraternal meeting. For experts, however, it is one of the most important meetings in recent times and represents an unprecedented historical turning point. The U.S. administration imposed sanctions on African leaders involved in the conflict of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. President Trump sanctioned Rwandan Minister for Regional Integration James Kabarebe and the M23 rebels spokesperson Lawrence Kanyuka for their support to the M23 group. Likewise, Washington gave penalties to 2 companies attached to Kanyuka. The M23 group has recently seized Goma and Bukavu eastern main cities. Since the onset of the conflict, authorities registered over 700 deaths and nearly 3,000 injured.
There
were lifeless bodies all over the city of Bukavu. When we received a guarantee of security, we set out to collect the bodies throughout the city of Bukavu so that they could be buried with dignity and safety.
Many people have lost their lives in this war. We, the people of Bukavu, don't want war. We want peace. It's pitiful and sad to see our brothers who lost their lives like animals being buried in poor conditions.
In a ceremony marked by the raising of the Ivory Coast flag, France withdraws from its only military base in the African country. Parisian troops had occupied the military base at Port Bouet, near the capital Abidjan, since 1978. The Birahima Ouattara, Ivory Coast Defense Minister, said that this act marked a new stage in relations between the two nations, while his French counterpart Sébastien Lecornu described the act as a historic event and acknowledged that changes must also take place in military relations. French troops, who have a long and dark history in West Africa, have been expelled from several countries in the sub-region.
Ladies and gentlemen, at the end of the year, the President of the Republic indicated on his keynote address that France would hand over the 43rd BIMA, that is French Marine Infantry Battalion based to the Ivorian Armed Forces. This one will be named after the late General Thomas Dacquin. This ceremony is to announce that.
We have a second short break coming up, but before we invite you to visit our YouTube channel at teleSUR English, there you'll be able to rewatch our interviews, top stories, special broadcastings and more. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. If you find a short break, don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. The Union Party, the center-right force leading the German election polls, has lost 2 percentage points in the last few hours. By contrast, the far-right Alternative for Germany has risen slightly to 21% of the vote. Germany is on the edge. Less than 72 hours before the early elections, there is already talk of pacts. The aim is to strengthen the cordon sanitaire in order to prevent the advance of the far right, which is only 7 points behind the center-right, which currently has 28% support. The Social Democrats, currently in government, have been hit hard by the performance of Chancellor Olaf Scholz and remain at a modest 16%, but the Socialists of the left could cross the 5% threshold, while more than a quarter of voters, 27%, remain undecided. The Russian government denounced NATO's growing threat in their domestic ports. Governmental authorities ensure military risk and threats against Russia have ramped it up due to the upsurge of NATO forces willing to attack port facilities. In this sense, they emphasized that they were coping with these menaces to submarine and port infrastructures in order to neutralize them. Meanwhile, a high official of the Russian government pointed out that among NATO's targets are ships, large maritime oil terminals, railroad crossings through which fuel is transported, and large bridges. The Russian armed forces have carried out 11 attacks on various Ukrainian military infrastructures in recent days. In a statement, the Russian Defense Ministry said that between February 15th and 21st, the attacks were carried out in Ukrainian gas, energy and port areas, as well as power stations supporting the Kyiv military-industrial complex and sites of temporary deployments of armed formations of the Ukrainian regime and foreign mercenaries. According to the security service, the Russian air defense system shot down 2 MiG-29 aircraft and 790 unmanned aerial vehicles of the Kyiv aircraft type. The Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov met Thursday with his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi to debate on concerning global issues. On the sidelines of the current G20 meeting held until today, both diplomats stressed importance on political dialogue to settle disputes. Furthermore, they tackled topics of common interest, such as their relation with the US and possible solutions to conflicts, namely the one in Ukraine. Both foreign ministers agreed on talking and taking the lead as stabilizing factors against the ongoing turmoil in the global system. And the Sudanese government recalled its ambassador from Kenya, Kamal Jubara, for consultation in protest against allowing meetings of rebel militias and their allies. The Sudanese Foreign Ministry criticized the decision of the Kenyan government by saying the latter's actions promotes a conspiracy to consolidate the coming to power of a militia. Moreover, Sudanese authorities described the Kenyan call as a serious threat to regional peace and security and to the Sudanese administration accused the Kenyan authorities of backing up the Rapid Support Forces, which had announced their intention to set up a parallel government. And with this information, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net and join us on social media. We are on Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram and TikTok as well. For TeleSUR English, I'm Alejandra Garcia. Thank you for watching.